Hi, good morning, everyone. We just wait a minute, so just gone 10. Just wait a minute just to any stragglers to catch up, and then we'll crack on. So just give it a couple of minutes, if that's okay. Right, okay, good morning, everyone. I think we'll crack on. So welcome to this webinar, it's Hikvision webinar. My name's Dan King. I'm one of the project pre-sales engineers over at Hikvision. And today I'll be joined by two of my colleagues, Sawyer Tao, who is the product manager for the Hike Pro Connect solution, and Steve Pan, who's the product manager for the smart switch, and in fact all of our switch-based solutions and transmission. They will be answering questions as we go along. So with regard to questions, everyone is muted in this webinar today. So if you do have any questions throughout this presentation and demonstration, please feel free to ask any questions in the box, the chat facility at the bottom of the screen. They'll be asked as we go along. Also, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a little bit of time to answer any questions you may have during that time or that have come up since then. So, without further ado, we'll move on. So today what we're looking at is visualizing network topologies with the Hikvision smart switches and the Pro Connect solutions. Bit of a mouthful, but what it is generally for Discover is basically how to easily see the performance and any vulnerabilities on your network using the Pro Connect solution. So what we're going to cover today is the very basics of what is a smart managed switch, some general information about that, so product ranges, part numbers, etc. The system structure in itself, so your topology of a switch based system, functionality of the system, and that will also include a live demo showing it in a live network, and we'll sort of fabricate some faults, etc. Compatibility across the network, and then a summary. And as I say, at the end, we'll hang on line for a little while just for any more Q&A sessions. Today's session is not going to be a particularly long one, probably about 20 minutes to half an hour, depending on number of questions and that side of stuff. So it won't take massive time. So starting off with the very basics, traditional network switches. So in the switch world, there's really sort of three general areas of switches. We have what is known as an unmanaged switch, or as the picture references, what it's also known as a brick. What that is a basic switch. There is no real interaction per se with the systems themselves, so you can't program them, you can't do anything with them. They basically do what they say on the tin, and they'll perform very well to their specifications. So it's a plug and play solution. You can't pull any information out of them or upload anything to them. So very handy for these smaller based networks or not as secure systems that you require there. The second type is your web managed or web-based or smart switches, which we're going to be talking about today. So this gives you a level of management for a web interface or another solutions we'll see today that allows you to enable certain properties on the switch and certain applications and pull some information out of them. And then top end, of course, is your fully managed switch, which gives you full rights over pretty much anything that goes on in the system itself. And you have full control over traffic and bits and pieces, and anything that really happens within the system you can control, monitor, report against, and stuff like that. So that's your high end. But today, just to recap, we'll be looking really at the web managed smart based solutions with our Pro Connect system. So typical challenges of a standard network, there's a few that are quite common. Probably the most common is the unknown or unclear network structure. So if you have a network that you have not administered or not created to start with, there may be an issue that you don't know how it's laid out, the topology of it, the way the system is working, which in itself can be problematic, especially when you're fault finding and management of the system. Network faults obviously it moves on from that. So if you have any issues with the network and you don't know the layout of the network itself, it's very hard to recognize or find areas of sort of low bandwidth, bottlenecking, that kind of stuff. How your network is laid out, it makes life a hell of a lot easier. And then of course, more common one in the CCTV world is system security, and the networks are treated separately. Quite often you have your CCTV system or access control system, and then you also have the network, and there's sort of two different entities. So again, this leads to the issue of unknown structures, unknown layouts and stuff. So by using the smart switches, as we'll see, you can actually combat a lot of these issues quite quickly, as well as very straightforward, without much configuration on that side. So we'll look at what is a smart managed switch, or in depth in that. So from our side of things, what we're really talking about today for this demonstration and this presentation is three main areas. The fact that it supports a network topology with preview as well as operational. So it will populate a graphical display showing you what is on your network. It supports device and network status monitoring. So that gives you the information of what is happening on your network between every point within that network itself, with a quite user-friendly interface. And then, of course, it's compatible with our three platforms that I'm sure you'll be aware of, which is our Hypro connectors, which we're mainly talking about today, the IVMS 4200, which is our install software, and our VMS platform, which is Hype Central. So everything you're seeing today is supported on all three of those platforms. But to recap, today we're really talking about the Pro Connect, so the mobile solution on there. So a little bit of general information just about the switches themselves. So again, this is highlighting the smart switches. This is the naming rules that we use over at Hike. So I'll quickly run through them. Anything that's not DS basically means it's Hikvision equipment. The 3E or 3T means it's a switch or an industrial level switch. Obviously, we do a range of industrial switches, so they're uprated for harsher environments, etc. And then the important thing for what we're talking about today is whether it's a web stroke smart managed series. So that needs to be one in that part of the part number there. The next, moving along, it's the bandwidths available across the ports. So for instance, one is 100 meg across all your ports, going right around to number. If you have a 7 in your part number, it's a gig across the ports with a 10 gig uplink. So there's a lot of different variants in there. The next number along is the interface number. So in this scenario, it's 26. So that would typically be 24 usable ports with 2 uplinks on there. And next along is it defines whether it's a PoE system and the type of PoE. So P is standard PoE, HP is your high PoE, and D is a desktop, just a brick switch with no PoE, for instance. And the last number, which is also important with the smart manager, to make sure that you've got the E or the SI. So the I side of things means it's a smart managed solution on there. So anything with the 2 red highlighted parts in the part number would be compatible with what we're going to be talking about today. We'll look at a little more compatibility a bit later on. So, as mentioned, these are really the main ranges. We're going to look at 3 different ranges for different environments or different scenarios today. So we have our standard range, which is the 100 meg PoE based system. So with different port ranges, you can see between 5 and 26 on there. We have the gigabit PoE switches, and then the non-gigabit PoE, sorry, non-PoE gigabit switches. And all of these support system topology with device display, so everything connected to it, the DLC graphical representation, real-time bandwidth demonstration, device running status and alarm management, live view management, and single path network, which we'll look at in the demonstration. So just to highlight some of the feature sets of the 1000 base series. The L2 smart managed, as mentioned before, they're 100 based PoE, 100 based PoE ports. All of our switches support the 802.3 AF and 802.AT standards, standard 8-core supply on there. All of them have the 6 kV PoE surge protection, so you've got a little bit of surge in case you get any spikes, etc. on your network. And then the main difference is really between them are the port ranges, so the number of ports, but also your uplink ports and what they can do. So some of them have 100 meg and some of them have gig uplinks, some have 2 uplinks on them. On the characteristics side, all of these switches have what we know as a VIP port, except for the 1309. What the VIP port does is that keeps a monitor on the bandwidth usage of the network, and you can assign a particular port that is a critical port or a VIP port. So if there are any issues on your network where you're exceeding bandwidth or getting to the top end of your bandwidth on the switch, in which case you start to struggle, it prioritizes that port to make sure that port gets the service it requires. So that might be your MBR, for instance, or your connection to the sidewall. But that's an important feature set on there. The other feature set is the flexible extend mode. So what that basically means is standard networking distances you can run is 100 meters or 90 plus 10. But with the flexible extend mode, you can actually select certain ports and say that you actually want to extend it up to 300 meters. There is a sacrifice on that. So instead of it being 100 meg across that port, it will actually knock it down to a 10 meg bandwidth. But that's more than enough for a long distance camera run, for instance, or maybe even 2 cameras, depending on obviously the resolution and bandwidth requirements of those cameras themselves. And at the bottom there, it shows you your PoE budget or requirement or maximum requirement for your PoE wattage side of things. Moving on to the Gigabit PoE series, a little bit more functionality on there. On the left-hand side, you've got pretty much the same as what was on the normal 100 meg systems. On the characteristics, there's a lot more configurable support systems. So PoE watchdogs, SDP, RTSP systems, VLANs, etc. All of that side of things supported on these. They also have the extended mode on them. So again, you can throw your network up to 300 meters, and those are the wattage range on the systems themselves. So as you can see, we have quite a few different options depending on your requirement of your network itself. So system structure, we look at a basic system structure. Obviously network can be slightly different, but a very basic overlay of a network system would be your managed switch, or any switch basically be sitting in the middle. We're talking about the smart managed today. So, and the top end, it's your back end solution. So that the Hack Central Professional with your 4200 or anything you're viewing via. Or of course it could be your ProConnect, which is what we're talking about there. So ProConnect and the High Connect systems themselves. One thing that is missing off is there will be a router if you go into the outside world, but this just gives you a general overview. On the other side of that switch, and you have everything that's connected effectively on your LAN. So your IPC, MBRs, DVRs, access control, etc. So anything else is connected on it. And this just allows that's your basic system structure. Obviously, you can chain switches together to have a large, more expanded switch network, but that would be a very basic solution. So position different platforms. So today, as I said, we are really looking at the ProConnect solution. So and we have the ProConnect and the Connect solution. So the ProConnect is more for the installer, the installers out there. So that's for your deploying and delivering and that side of things. And your Connect is more for the end user. So you've got that information there to hand so they can enjoy the system itself. And then in between, we've got the alarm side of things. So if you are using the health monitoring option, you can have alarm generation via if you have a failure on the system, whether it be bandwidth, which we'll look at, or disconnection of ports. You can generate alarms, push notification, emails, etc. So we'll look at the feature system. So there's 2 main areas. User-friendly graphical interface, so we'll go through that a bit more in depth, and then the maintenance side of things. So the user-friendly side of things, so it's just what we're trying to do here really is instead of it being quite an in-depth solution where you have to drill into the systems, it's just almost a one-glance solution. So you'll see the full topology of everything on your network, real-time data, which shows bandwidth, exceptions, alerts, etc. Automatic refresh, when you can manually refresh that. From view modes, which we'll look at in the demo, and then the remote maintenance side of things. So if you are using the health monitoring option on the system, you can have alerts from the network itself. So as I mentioned, if you have disconnection or bandwidth issues, it can generate your alarm. So remotely, you can then dial into the system and look at that. You can quickly, just by the graphical interface, locate abnormal devices or systems that are having issues on the system itself. We can remotely restart devices from a port-based or the switch entirely. And of course, if there are already stuff, we can do that online. So all this side of stuff is taking away the traditional need to go to site and investigate possible issues, and it will give you some the install and service guys there. It will give you a bit of information when if you do have to attend site, what might be causing the issue, so they'll find from the start. So a few different things to the graphical interface, which we'll look at in a live demo. But it's just a general information, so it shows you everything that's connected. So in this image here, the top option, the top box is the main switch, and you're seeing everything connected to it. On this image, we've got a couple of different colours with regard to the alert. So on there we have, excuse me, on there we have anything in red, that's an issue. You may be able to see, but the yellow line, that basically means you're exceeding a bandwidth tolerance as well. And anything that's got an X, it means it's been disconnected. So we'll look at that. That's web, and on the ProConnect, you're getting the same sort of display. So obviously, the one to the left is actually via PC or laptop going into your ProConnect solution via the web, via a web browser, or on your smartphone or tablets. The same information on there. This information is only supported with the smart switch sites. Just to highlight as well, as mentioned before, we do offer this on different platforms. So we're on the IBM S4200. You'll see that you'll get this very similar layer, and on RMS, the Hike Central platform, again, you'll get the same sort of layout with the same sort of information on there. So if you as well. So what we can see is real-time port status. So when we connect them, we'll see it's live sort of later in the demo. You'll get the graphical display of the ports, what's connected, and indication is very straightforward. So the green is normal, grey means there's nothing physically connected. There hasn't been anything connected to that particular port. And of course, with red, that means there's been an alarm or an alert on that particular port itself. And it'll give you some information about that. The main notes for the alarms will be PoE ports, power off, at physical disconnection, your 45 connection, or if you're using SFT, but also for fiber connection, if that's been disconnected. We'll look at the large base when we get to the live demo. So if you zoom in, you'll be able to see that. So if you've got a lot of systems on like multiple switches or 24-port switches, the larger systems, it's just easier to dial into. You can see the detailed port data, bitrate, bandwidth usage per port on there, the usage itself, and we can restart the ports as well. So individually, we can restart ports. So if you do have a problematic port, in this information here, you've got the red icon, for instance. If you had that, then you were remote. Sometimes a restart of especially if there's a camera hanging off of that, might resolve the issue. So you just be able to restart the port, and then you can clear your alarms down. And as you can say on the mobile app, you get the same functionality. The maintenance side of things, as mentioned before, it allows you remotely to be able to sort of look at the network itself in advance, possibly take action to remedy it, but also it gives you the opportunity to be forearmed with possibly any information that you might need going to us. If you have a failure, if there's an issue with a particular area of the network, then at least you know where you're looking at when you arrive on site. And so you can quickly locate abnormal devices. So the system will display anything that's into the switch that's not supported to say. It won't give you any information about it, but obviously one of the issues with certain networks is if you have people plugging stuff into networks that are not allowed, which could of course cause issues with bandwidth, that will quickly locate that side of things as well. As I mentioned before, you can restart devices, so which may remedy issues. And of course, we mentioned as well, we've got the online upgrade. And just to highlight the bandwidth usage on there, with the app itself, we have some predefined network usages. So if you see the connectivity lines, which we'll see live, and I'll highlight them again later. If you see the the grey line between devices, that basically means the bandwidth consumption is below 60% of the bandwidth, the maximum bandwidth. So in the networks, that's pretty healthy. It's going up to 60 and 80%. You can get a pre-alarm on that based on the health monitoring. So if a lot of your network is sitting there, or look at expanding upon the network or increasing bandwidth capability on the network, and it's above 80%, you're going to get a red line. So that's the times when you might start having network issues and slowdowns, etc. So and you can generate alarms off that if using the health monitoring option there. So that was a bit about the actual system itself. So what we'll do now, just bear with, I will just quickly jump onto the live network. So in the background. Right. So I hope you can all see that. So this is your main splash screen of your ProConnect. Obviously, I'm going in via a portal here. So it's not my phone, but you'll get the same sort of graphical information on your phone or tablet. And this is with the ProConnect. So some of you guys may have already seen ProConnect. This is to give you a general site overview. However, what we're looking at today, of course, is the switch side. So if we come over here, click on the site, and then we'll look at the cloud switch itself. So it just takes a second to get information there. So this is, I'm connected to the switch now in itself. So I'm connected to the main switch, and then on the system itself, it gives you a quick overview here. Along the top of what's there, we have two, there's a very small switch we've created, so it's a very small network we've created for this demo today. So we've got two switches, and over here we've got a camera. So at this location here, you can do some certain management of the system. So as a default, there's no real configuration on the system. Once you have a smart switch on there and you're connecting stuff to it, cameras, etc., it will automatically populate. So you don't have to add stuff or change it. The only thing you might want to do is, as a default, it will pull up the camera name or the model number of the unit itself, the supported unit, and that is actually the serial number. That can be edited. So you might want to change camera name to camera 1, front door, whatever, just for a bit more clarity on the system. And that's one of the things. But from here as well, we can go into, this is of course the camera here, so we can go into configuration. So we can actually go into configuration of the camera side of things on there. So just take a second to pull the credentials up. And yeah, anybody's used to the menu structure of the Hikvision cameras, you'll recognize that. And as you can see, you can go and administer certain aspects of the camera itself. So again, so if you have issues with bandwidth, for instance, the camera or whatever, you can remote configure all that stuff via the switch itself. We'll close that down. You can also have a look at the live view. This will actually ask you to log in for credentials as well on there for additional credentials. So any cameras, etc., that are connected to the system. There we go. Bit of a messy desk, I do apologise. But as you can see, that's a live camera image there. And so you can see that we do have additional options on the system. So we do have pan and tilt. If this isn't a pan and tilt camera that I'm connected to be fair, it's a static. But if you have pan and tilt on there, you can control that. And obviously zoom bits and pieces there. That just gives you, if you're unaware of what a particular, especially on the camera side of things, what it is, then it's easy to be able to dial in. Also a report of the customer. Quite often, if a camera's misbehaving, lighting levels, etc., you can dial directly into that camera and see that information there. So, and that's the actual main splash screen there. I was talking about the exception side of things earlier. We'll look at exceptions themselves before looking at the topology. So when you're configuring the system itself, you can, and you have the health monitoring option on the solution, just take a sec for that. You can enable that you want exceptions on there, and with the system itself, we can have a look at all the exceptions that you can have. So this is per channel. Of course, you have, this is here, we have the per the switch itself, so the exceptions are already on there. So whether it's offline or exceeds its power limits itself, or against the individual port. So against the port itself, the per channel, if we want notifications or alerts that you've got PoE power off, disconnected, your RJ45 is connected, etc., port blocked or busy, then you can have that side of things generate you alerts and alarms. But you need to enable that side. Very clear on my button. So, but going back into the system itself, so we go to site and we'll look at the topology of the solution. So, as our network is at the moment, as I mentioned, we have a couple of switches and a camera. Obviously, we're all connected into the main company network here at the office. So when I jump into the topology, you'll see it will populate a hell of a lot, which will navigate down to. So at the moment, obviously, we have a hell of a lot on the network. As you can see, you can zoom in and manipulate this. What we really want to look at, so if you just click on that, there we go. So this side of things, so this, what we're looking at here is a couple of things really. This is the main switch I'm connected to up here. And this is everything connected off it. So the camera up there's another switch on there. This side of stuff is an unsupported network. So we've left that on there to show you what you'll see if you have something that's not connected, that's not a smart switch. So it will still say it's connected to something. It gives you very limited information. In fact, that's just the serial number and it'll give you the IP address. But anything that's supported gives you a lot more information on there. So first of all, we'll look at the main switch itself. If we double click on that, you open up a window, so it gives you the display. So things that obviously, if you have changed the name here in the previous screen, that will change there. You don't have to worry about not knowing the information because it's still hard set here. So including the serial number. So if you do change that from the default, it will give you the model number and the serial number. So for logging purposes or whatever, you can still have that information to hand. We can reboot the switch itself, which I won't do obviously to drop offline for a second, but you can reboot the entire switch itself here from the system. We have the device status. Can perform a manual health check. So if you click on refresh there, it will just check the system and make sure that everything is working correctly and give you an output of a function on there. Obviously the system is online, so it's ticked. We have PoE power, so that is the current power of what the system is using. So 2.1 watts out of the possible 110 watts. And then beneath that, this is a peak power. So in the last 7 days, it will give you an output of what the highest level of. So one of the problems that you might have with a solution, network solution, is that you have busy times, but where if you're not interrogating that at that particular time, it's hard to see what may or may not have been happening. So from a power point of view, that will show you what the top level was within 7 days. If it's topping out 110 watts on that particular switch, you know you've got an issue with draw on the systems. Moving down itself, so as discussed earlier, you have the port status. So this is, of course, is an 8-port switch with a single uplink port, so that gives you the graphical display. As we've currently got it, we've got 2 items, as we can see on the main topology there, we have 2 additional items connected to, which is a switch and a camera, and over here on the uplink, that's going to our main network. So for ease of use, that just instantly shows you where they're physically plugged into the system. The colours represent, obviously, green's healthy, it's doing what it should do. If any of those are red, which we'll check in a second when my colleague disconnects, and there's an issue. If they're greyed out, it basically means it's not been connected to. So there hasn't been anything connected to that particular port. And then if we move down, we can look at the system itself. So this is per port, so this is Ethernet port 2 up here. Again, it's connected. This is your bit rates that you're running through. And your bandwidth usage, so it's not having a huge demand on the system. We can look at the system itself here again, so there's a bit more information about it. So device serial number, device name, which will change if you amend that, and what it is. And of course, you've got the options here to restart that particular port. So if you have an issue with a port and it's red, for instance, it's indicating there's an error with it, you can restart that and see if that refreshes or resolves the issue. Or as explained before, you can enable the extended mode here. So that's expanding the network capability from 100 meters standard, 100 meters to possibly 300. Obviously, as mentioned before, you are sacrificing some bandwidth there. And then down at the bottom here, which is obviously the G1 uplink port, which gives you the same stuff. Obviously, as mentioned before, this shows you, because we're connected to a switch that's not supporting the smart feature set, it knows it's connected to something. It will give you the bandwidth usage, but because it can't pull that information from it, it's obviously just displaying something like, but it's still handy to know. So if you have a scenario where something that you don't know about has been connected into network, then that gives you an indication of whereabouts it is physically as well. So if we disconnect the camera from the port, so at the moment, if we're hovering over here on the live side of things, from this main interface here, we can see all the information we're seeing there as well. So that's your upstream, the downstream, what it's connected to, what port it's connected to, just by hovering on the line itself, and also the device IP addresses. And you can do that anything it's connected to. Obviously, as mentioned before, if it's connecting to something that's unknown, we can't pull that information, but it at least gives you the IP addresses and stuff. And then on there, so if we on the system itself, it can take a minute or so for the system to the watchdog is monitoring constantly, but you're going across the cloud, so it takes a little while. So you can manually refresh that. So if we click on the refresh on the system itself, it will expand. Refresh. So I know, as you can see, we've now got an extend that. I'll just lose that there. So as you can see, instantly we've got an error come up on the system itself. So it's saying we've got an error on that particular switch. It's graphically showing you that you've got a disconnection here on this to this camera, and obviously because this camera now fine, and it shows you you've got another device on there. So that's a relatively real-time solution. That, if you're using the health monitoring, the health check side of things, you can get that system to email or send you push notifications to your devices, so you'll instantly know that you've got a problem, and it will detail what it is. So the switch, or the end user, that it's been lost, disconnected, on that side of stuff. So that is a bit of an overview on the system itself. As mentioned, the health check. So we can go into the exception center. So itself. So this is one I was testing yesterday. So as you can see, last 7 days, you can do a schedule by it. So if retrospectively, if you have any issues with the system and you're using the health module on the system itself, that you've had a report from your customer that you've had some issues with the system, but it's now working quite happily. This will give you a list of the information that's actually happened on there. So as you can see, it tells you the time and date, a cloud switch, the source, so it's the switch itself, and the exception type. So in this particular case, it was an RJ45 was disconnected from that particular port. Obviously, if you go to that, you've got tons of issues, and an issue on the network itself. You can export that information into stuff like CSV, and you can also update. They would just literally be continuing running on that side of stuff on there. And that really sort of just showcases a live network solution there, and what it does and how it works, and what you'll effectively see on there. So that's sort of the demo side of things done. We'll quickly jump back to the PowerPoint to just finish up. So with the demo side of things completed, so we're moving on to compatibility. So obviously, as this piece going on, we've been talking about the switch solution itself with the Pro Connect. Obviously, with the Pro Connect, High Pro Connect, you need to be running on version 1.5 and above, and the normal High Connect app is version 4.10 and above. It's updated the latest version, so you won't miss there. The smart switches themselves, the firmware versions are listed there for all of them. The existing models, we have some firmware being released anytime now, pretty much. I'm thinking might actually already released for those particular models. And then we have some new models, some new hardware being released in this quarter that will have the feature sets supported that we've seen today. In summary, what we looked at today really is, with the High Pro Connect solution, is the management with the complete topologies. Just to recap, there's no real configuration on the system. Once you plug that sort of things in, it's going to self-populate. The only thing, as I mentioned, you might want to do is change the naming to make life or the connected devices to a bit more of a smart overview of your system. Consider monitoring the system status, so they give you a live active monitoring of your system, of your network. So if you do have any fault issues or anything like that, you'll get push alarms in real time. That can be, as I mentioned, a push alarm or via an email. And of course, it gives you live preview of control. So from a remote position, from a switch, you can dial into a system, have a camera, for instance, see that it's there, it's functioning, the image is what you expect it to be. And so it gives you a lot of power remotely before having to attend the site. That wraps it up today for me. So if we've got any questions, I mentioned before, we will stay online just for a little while, see if there's any more questions come off. So I've been seeing there have been quite a few questions coming through throughout the presentation. We'll stay online for a little while. But if you, as always happens, you think of something later on, please feel free to contact the pre-sales guys at presales.uk.com with any questions you may have about today. Or of course, contact your PM or local distributor or your favourite distributor who will be able to help you out on that side of solutions as well. And that's it for me. But thank you very much. I hope this has been enjoyable and give you some information on this solution. But as I say, any questions, feel free to jump them across. And thanks a lot. I'll see you on the next one.